So for today's video, we're going to talk about hydration. I'm going to mostly err on the side of what is practically useful. There is a lot of underlying science to how we arrived at what we're going to go over, and I may go over that in detail in an article of some kind, probably on my Substack. But for today, we're going to keep things concise and useful. So the first thing that we need to go over for hydration is your base hydration. This is laying the foundation for the rest of your day, for staving off dehydration, and also not following a generic guideline that usually you'll find online, like men drink this much, women drink this much, and usually it's somewhere around like a gallon a day or 3 or 4 liters per day, which may be right for you, but it may also not be enough, which is going to put you in what's called hypohydration, dehydration, or it may be more than you need, which is also a bad thing. This is hyperhydration. What we're aiming for is sort of an in the middle of that dial. It's called euhydration, EU hydration, which is just to say you are properly hydrated. So the base hydration formula is pretty simple. So I've got standard and metric here because I'm not sure where you're watching from, or whether you're from a country that uses metric or one that uses standard. You may find one unit of measurement a little bit easier to work with in your head. I typically, when it comes to hydration and a lot of supplements, I tend to use metric, even though I'm American and most of my weightlifting I'm doing standard. So just use whatever is most useful for you. So at standard, first you're going to take your body weight in pounds. You're going to divide that by 2. And that number that it gives you is going to be the number of fluid ounces that you need to consume in a day. So for an example, so if someone's 185 pounds, that divided by 2 would be 92.5, and that's how many fluid ounces you need in a day. Now, this is the first number that you're going to get. For metric, it's just kilograms times 32.6 is milliliters of water that you need to take in per day. And for example, 85 kilograms times this is 2,771 milliliters, or about 2.7 liters. Now, these 3 points down here, this is just your starting point, whatever this number is. So if you're going to follow along, maybe you've got a calculator next to you, you can punch these numbers in, because as long as your weight isn't fluctuating dramatically, you can basically run off of these numbers for the rest of your life as long as you're staying around that weight. Okay, so you're going to take that number and it's going to go up based on these 3 factors typically: ambient temperature, so what the temperature of the air is; humidity, because it's going to drive up sweating as well; and activity level. So for instance, I work a day job where I'm out in the heat moving a lot of heavy things around some days, and so right now in the summer it's hot, it's very humid where I live, and my activity level varies depending on what I'm doing. But my numbers as a 165-pound person, or I think that's around 75 kilograms, tends to be 84 and a half ounces, fluid ounces of water. And that number is about a half gallon plus a little more than a half gallon. That ends up being closer to 1.5 gallons on a hot day. But rather than trying to account for these, I've seen some calculators try to give you punch in your temperature, the humidity, and activity level, and it gives you a new number. The problem that I have with that is that your sweat rate is going to be different. It's going to be very individual. So one person in the same environment as me, even accounting for body weight, that's doing the same work, may sweat 2, even 3, 4 times as much as I do, or they may not sweat much at all. Or the activity level ends up not really being the thing that makes them sweat. I know some people only sweat because of the environment, and activity never seems to make them sweat. So the next thing that we're going to go over is kind of a practical way to decide, are you drinking enough? So you should start with this number here, okay, for yourself, and then assume that it's going to need to go up based on these factors. And you can determine over time what that probably looks like based on the next slide. All right, so what we have for determining hydration status, a way you can kind of test whether you're drinking enough based on the things that were already previously mentioned, would be the W.U.T principle: weight, urine, and thirst. So detail on each of these. For weight, this is referring to your body weight. If you see more than a 1% decrease in body weight from day to day, then there is a chance that you are not rehydrating quite enough. Now, this can be thrown off a little bit by if you are losing actual weight, but typically you're not going to see a 1% difference in body weight in a single day from a more metabolically driven, calorie oriented weight loss. So 1%, 200-pound person, 2 pounds, 100-pound person, 1 pound, anything in between. For urine, this is referring to the color of the urine. Um, if you are more hydrated, it's going to be more on the clear side. If you are dehydrated, it goes more and more toward a darker yellow until it's probably an amber color. If it is any sort of odd color, that's indicative of some other kind of issue. Um, the other thing you need to account for when it comes to urine color is that if you're going into a toilet, it is being diluted into likely a gallon or more of water. And so you could pay more attention to the stream, or just kind of understand that whatever you're seeing is like a shade or two lighter than it actually is coming out. And the last is thirst. It's just your sense of thirst. How thirsty do you feel? The reason that each of these by itself is not necessarily indicative of dehydration is there's a couple of reasons your weight could be off. Your urine color could be changed by different things, like some vitamins change the color of your urine. And thirst is actually a poor indicator of hydration while you're active. Your sense of thirst, your perception of your thirst is just not always accurate. It can be skewed, which is why any combination of the two of them, as you see here, means that you're likely dehydrated. If all three are present, it's very likely. All right, so to end this section on a practical note, I'll use myself as an example of how I do this day to day to cover just base hydration. I'm 165 pounds, divided by 2, 82.5, so that's 82.5 fluid ounces in a day. And the way I typically break this up is first thing in the morning, I recommend you can drink like a bolus amount of water, like, somewhere around 2 cups, maybe if you're really small, just one. But I have this like Ninja Blender, whatever bottle. It's about 21 ounces, so somewhere 20, 21. I'm filling this up and I'm chugging it first thing in the morning. And down here, I cover some electrolytes that I put in it to sort of jumpstart my day. Since I'm eating a pretty clean diet, I'm not getting a lot of extra sodium from my food. So I'm going to salt my food pretty liberally. And I also start by adding some. These are not prescriptive amounts, they're just easy, and I know they work for me. Um, I add a half teaspoon of a high quality salt like Redmonds or Celtic. There's plenty of other different brands, but just make sure that it is a clean salt. Check for microplastics or any sort of chemical exposure. You can check on the brand. Even high quality salt's not expensive. This is NoSalt that I just put in one of these old bottles. NoSalt or NuSalt are different brands. It's potassium chloride. It's just a potassium salt. I'm going to add like a quarter teaspoon of this. It's about 600 or so milligrams of potassium. And I'm going to recommend magnesium malate as the form of magnesium you use if you're adding it to your morning hydration stack. I'm only doing about 100 milligrams because I'm going to get magnesium from my food, and I typically recommend to just about everybody magnesium bisglycinate or glycinate in the evening before bed. It helps with sleep. It's very bioavailable, so you're absorbing a lot of it. And The only reason that I don't recommend it here, if you do add it to your morning stack, is that magnesium glycinate has not a sedative effect per se, but it does kind of relax you and it primes you for sleep, so to speak. That's the glycine that it's bound to. Magnesium malate, which is magnesium bound to malic acid, is involved in energy production. Malic acid has to do with the way we produce ATP. There are some other forms that can be useful, but this one's very cheap. Um, I think this particular brand or source, it's like 140 milligrams per capsule, but again, really inexpensive. And when I'm not sweating as much when summer ends, I'll probably end up dropping this. But the idea is that I'm chugging that first thing in the morning, so I'm getting electrolytes to help get the muscles firing and help get the brain firing. And then the other 64 ounces are covered by this half-gallon bottle I carry around. I won't nerd out about bottles in this video too much, but you don't want to be drinking out of plastic for the most part. So just, I got this from Walmart. It's like $20. It's TAL is the brand, and there's a bunch of other kinds. Just get something that you like. Stainless steel or glass, but glass is not very practical to carry with you. You can see how many times I've dropped this thing. This is going to cover the rest. That puts me at 84 fluid ounces, which on a day like today where I'm inside and it's like 70 degrees or so outside, I'm not sweating a lot. This is fine. If I am sweating and I'm following the W.U.T principle from before, working in the heat, then going off of usually urine color and how thirsty I feel because I can't check my weight during the day, I'm going to just keep drinking the bottle. And when I run out, I refill it. And usually I go through about a gallon in a day. All right, so for perihydration or intra-workout hydration, because this is what we need to account for when we are, training our sport or in the gym and you're sweating, you need to replenish those fluids that are being lost in sweat. But you can only take in so much fluid so fast that you don't just have a bolus amount of water sitting in your stomach sloshing around, because that's going to feel awful and it's going to affect your movement and your performance. And so, to find how much you take in at a pace that you can handle, we use what's called the Galpin equation. This is made by Dr. Andy Galpin, who took a more complicated formula and made a simplified form of it, which is a lot more practical. Also, shout out to Dr. Andy Galpin. You should watch his stuff. His video series on hydration has a lot of what we're going over, so it's great stuff. So the equation in standard is going to be body weight in pounds divided by 30 equals fluid ounces per 15 to 20 minutes. For example, that is 185 pounds. That would put you at 6.1 fluid ounces. I would just round down to 6. Typically, just rounding up is also fine. Don't overcomplicate it. You don't need to account for point whatever. Keep it whole numbers. For metric, it's body weight in kilograms times 2. That's milliliters per 15 to 20 minutes, which an 85 kilogram person is going to need 170 milliliters per 15 to 20 minutes. How do you simplify that in practice? So during a training session, I usually have a stopwatch going, or there's an app depending on what kind of training I'm doing. And I'm going to watch that timer and just glance at it throughout my training. And as every 15-minute time approaches, or 15-minute block on that timer approaches, I'm just keeping an eye on my bottle. And I have a bottle with increments on the side. So the idea is I'm just trying to keep pace, because during your training, you want to keep your outputs high. You want your performance to be good. And which we haven't gone over yet, but it only takes a 2% drop off in body weight to see a significant drop in performance. It's somewhere around a 10% drop in performance at 2% body weight loss. For me, that is only about 3 pounds, which I have some equations or some math here. That ends up only being about 1,500 milliliters of water, so a liter and a half. That's not a whole lot. You will sweat out 2 to 3 liters an hour once you're usually deeper into a session if it's intense enough. Some people could be up to 4 or 5. Some people it's just one, but it really only takes about an hour to reach that for most people. And that's not even accounting if it's a really humid environment or if they are a super sweater, somebody who just sweats profusely. So, alongside the fluid loss, there's also the electrolytes that are being lost. The most important of which for performance we'll go over in just a moment. Okay, so what is in sweat? In 1 liter of sweat, you have sodium, chloride, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and trace amounts of other minerals like zinc, copper, iron, chromium, nickel. Don't really need to remember these. There's also some vitamins that are lost in sweat as well. And if you want to look at the amounts, just pause the video. So magnesium and calcium have little stars next to them for a reason. The reason being is that the acute or more immediate drop-offs in performance that you get from fluid loss are going to mostly come from the water, sodium, chloride, and potassium. The performance deficits that come from magnesium and calcium and everything else are mostly from long-term depletion. So as long as you are eating a nutrient-dense diet and or supplementing, usually for these, then you're going to be fine. The only reason I'd probably include these in a formula for intra-workout hydration would be if you are training 4 hours or longer, something like ultra endurance training. If you are under that threshold, most people are, it's like an hour or two or even less, then you're going to be perfectly fine just accounting for these. Now, a lot of different electrolyte solutions exist out there, um, but usually they don't cover the ratios or quantities in general that need to be covered. Things like Gatorade and Powerade are usually not actually cutting it. They taste good, but their ratios are kind of terrible. Now, you could go the simple route like I usually do for mostly budget reasons, but a half a teaspoon of sodium chloride, salt, is going to cover the bases here. Okay, so a quarter teaspoon of salt has about for the upper 400s to 600 milligrams of sodium and somewhere around I think it's 7 to 900 milligrams of chloride. So a half teaspoon is getting you most of the way there or almost entirely there depending on how much you sweat out in this range per liter. So half a teaspoon, and then usually I'm doing a little bit around an eighth of a teaspoon or more of potassium chloride, which is going to bring chloride up a little bit more, and that's going to put you right around here for potassium. Now, something else you can do is if you do have a good electrolyte formula that you're using, um, I know there's like Liquid IV, Element, and Serpo is a brand a number of my clients really like. You can look at the label and reference this chart and kind of figure out, okay, how much of this is actually in there. And if the potassium is sufficient, but you notice that there's not quite enough sodium, just add a little bit of salt, do a little bit of math, and then just write it down somewhere, write it on the bottle so that you always know what you need to be adding to the solution to meet your electrolyte needs. Now that we've covered intra workout hydration, what you're taking in and what that needs to be comprised of or composed of, post training rehydration, it's really simple math. It's going to be 16 to 24 ounces of fluid. Now, I say fluid because this needs to be that electrolyte solution, what you lost in sweat, per pound lost. And for metric, that is the rounded numbers end up being 1,100 to 1,500 milliliters per kilogram lost. So you're thinking, well, how do I know how much weight I lost? This is where something most people aren't practicing outside of like an athletics context you need to be weighing yourself before and after your training sessions. My recommendation is naked or in your underwear because your clothes are going to affect that measurement. And especially if they get drenched with sweat, you're going to lose that fluid. It's going to sit in your clothes for the most part, and that's going to affect your weighing yourself. So, what I usually am doing here is it's going to kind of look like pre-weigh-in. Okay, you're going to be drinking your Galpin Equation amounts of fluid during your training session, and then after the session, you're going to reweigh yourself, go to the bathroom if you need to first, and whatever that difference between your before and your now after weight is, that's what you're going off of here. Okay, so to make it practical, I'll put a little equation on the board. Okay, this is somewhat of a review, but this is kind of just a little guideline. So you've got your base hydration. Okay, so you go over everything we already did to find out what you should be drinking throughout the day. So your base hydration is covered. Now, for your training session, you're going to weigh in before. You're going to prepare your fluids, which I typically do like this. It's the number for the Galpin equation, so fluid ounces or milliliters. Multiply that by 4, okay? And then that's how much you need for every hour that you train, okay? So it's just the 15 minutes 4 times over times hours training. So if you know that you typically train an hour or two, or if sometimes it runs over, just prep extra. It's worth having it there. It's better to show up and have a little bit more left over because you're probably going to end up needing to drink it for the post session rehydration anyways. So just make sure you're keeping with pace with the timer, and then do a post weigh in and do the calculation that we went over before. Now, I will say when it comes to the post training rehydration, if you have another session that same day or within, like 4 hours or something, then it's pretty imperative that you have all of the electrolytes in the fluids that you need to consume, and also likely some form of quick digesting carbohydrate that's going to be something like about 30 grams of carbs or so, 15 to 30 grams, and it can be somewhere around 15 grams of protein or amino acids of some kind in a liquid meal. If you have an entire day or you aren't training the next day even, then just make sure you get the fluid in and make sure you are putting this yummy stuff on your food and that you're eating a nice hearty meal after your training session so that you can recover properly. Uh, that's basically it for rehydration. The last thing I'll go over with you is going to be some supplements that can be helpful. All right, so now to cover supplements that I found are really useful in the context of hydration. They're also useful for other things, so there is added benefit there. First is tried and true creatine, most studied supplement. Most everybody takes it and should be taking it. Um, for the dosage, it's the 5 to 10 grams. So this is the 5 grams is your typical dose that you're going to find on the bottle. It's what most people are going to be taking for a lot of the benefits that creatine gives you. I recommend toward the 10 gram or even more in some cases, because that is the range for a lot of the cognitive benefits that creatine can give, driving up brain levels of creatine. If you want to dig into that, I can go into it more in another video, but you can find plenty of cool content or look up the studies on creatine for helping with CTEs for like post concussion and things like that. If you have stomach issues with creatine monohydrate, creatine hydrochloride might be easier on the stomach. Okay, next is taurine, which most of us see are in energy drinks, but taurine is not a stimulant. In fact, it can actually be really helpful for issues that stimulants cause. So taurine has a lot of benefits for longevity and for brain function. Particularly, it helps with the production of GABA, GABA, which is kind of your calm neurotransmitter. Okay. Uh, it's also an osmoregulator. So that means that it's going to help with moving fluids and electrolytes in and out of cells where they need to go. And so Taking this every day at this dose is already a great move. Taking it with your solution that you're drinking during your training is just going to improve your the electrolyte and fluid transport while you're training. So added benefit. My only caveat with this that I recommend is if you're taking a pre-workout with beta-alanine, my recommendation is save the taurine for after the training session, because beta-alanine and taurine share transporter pathways to muscle tissue, the brain, and I believe the kidneys. And so it's not a problem. It just means if you take them at the same time, you're going to blunt the absorption of both. I think taurine typically wins out, but we want to get the most out of all of our supplements. So glycerol being the last one, you see a lot of extra detail. Glycerol is sometimes called glycerol ester of rosin. Um, Also, glycerol is chemically identical to glycerin. So you can get vegetable glycerin, and it's the exact same thing chemically. The main difference here is that glycerol is pure glycerol, whereas glycerin is usually referring to, like, it's kind of a food product. It's used in moisturizers as well. It usually has some percentage of water in it. But if you get food grade, particularly pharmaceutical food grade, which is still dirt cheap, then it is perfectly safe for human consumption. It is identical to this. Okay, so that's a way you can save money on that. Because if you try to get glycerol, especially sold as a like workout hydration product, it's going to cost so much more. So it's most studied as a for its effects on pre-workout hyperhydration, which you can kind of think of. I'll make a little illustration here. Let's see your hydration as a health bar, okay? And if you're hydrated, it's at 100%. And then this may not write well, but yeah, it doesn't work. Then you could think of hyperhydrating as putting excess fluids in, but glycerol allows you to retain them. So now you have like an extra bit of shield at the end of your health bar, like in a video game. So as you are sweating and losing fluids, at first you have to chip away at that extra health, that extra fluid before you start to dip into your body weight stores. And so it helps stave off dehydration. This is mostly beneficial in the context of endurance events like marathons in the heat, ultra marathons, triathlons, things like that. Okay, so if you do the equation here, 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight plus 25 to 35 milliliters per kilogram body weight. This is an hour to 2 hours before your activity. Then you've got that hyperhydration effect. If you've already done that, then during your event or session, it's going to be this right here, okay, per body weight. This is glycerol and water, okay? If you haven't done that, which I don't do endurance events, then I've found this quantity here to be really good is 0.4 grams per kilogram body weight. In how much fluid? I do the Galpin equation times 4. So for every hour that I am training, I am doing the 0.4 grams per kilogram. So I just pour that, because it's a liquid, into my bottle that I've prepped for each hour of training. Okay. And the post workout protocol, again, this is really only necessary if you have lost significant fluids and you don't have much time to make up for it before another training session or event. That's going to be 1 gram per kilogram plus 1.5 liters per kilogram lost. Okay, so basically you're doing the high end of the post workout. You're just adding a gram of glycerol per kilogram. That's going to accelerate hydration for recovery. So typically what I do for a lot of my sessions is going to be this formula, okay, plus the taurine, and it's going to be with the electrolyte solution. If you're doing any sort of endurance event, then it might be worth adding some kind of intra-workout carb and either essential amino acids or some form of protein. And that is going to be kind of the ultimate hydration formula. I can put this in the description, the recipe that I use, but the idea of this video is I wanted to equip you with the principles for these things so that you can look at the resources you have available to you, the products that you like, and put it in the context of the type of training you do and see what's going to work best for you. I encourage you to experiment with all of this stuff. Because everything we went over is relatively safe. Just don't go stupid with something like this and drink a ridiculous amount of water and put yourself at risk. But outside of that, this stuff is relatively safe. Experiment, learn more than me, and make a better video than this one that gets 100 million times more views. Okay? Spread this information around. If this helped you, share it with people. Not really for views' sake, but if you know somebody that they need this information, it would help them, just send it to them. I hope that what I presented was clear. And on the topic of water, I just want to share one passage with you and only take about a minute of your time. John chapter 4, verse 9. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Jesus answered and said unto her, If thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. If you want to know about this living water, I will have a link to another video in the bottom of the description. I hope you'll check it out and be encouraged by it. Thank you. If you have any questions, yet again, on the topics we covered today, please just shoot me a message on any platform we're connected on, or leave a comment on the video below.